Title topic. Okay, so let's talk about this real quick. There's a big difference between, I think, the approach of some classic media. Now, not all classic media, the stuff that we generally see as like supreme American, not just American, but just Western media, okay? Not all of it was done with this idea in mind, but I think this mindset and some of these quotes of what I'm about to go through, I think really set the scene for this. I'm not going to give you all of the details of the big thing that's going on with the Lord of the Rings, and Amazon is about to be having their own little version and spin on it, and not a lot of, well, I won't say not a lot, let's say a lot of true diehard Lord of the Rings, Tolkien supporters, fans are not fond of what's happening. There seems to be a lot of producers, writers, people that are part of this project that are more so trying to use the brand as this launching pad for their own kind of story, which is why I think so many people were disappointed in the trailer, because it looks like a generic non-Lord of the Rings type of deal. It just looks like a fantasy, and you could slap any damn fantasy kind of brand on it. And a lot of people took issue with that. Never mind the black elves and dwarves and all of that, and how that is literally canon breaking, the fact that that is a thing. But I'm going to go through a couple of quotes here. One really in particular that I wanted to go through from Peter Jackson, which I think embodies and why people see that definitely original kind of trilogy, if you will, as peak media. Okay, no matter people that were into Tolkien or not, no, it wasn't a 1-by-1 direct adaptation, but it was very damn close, according to a lot of people that were Lord of the Rings guys. And I remember when that came out, even despite it coming out, they had their gripes. It's kind of like what I have with Marvel and DC and those expectations that they have. And this is what I appreciate from that audience. Very intelligent audience, far more intelligent to my colleagues, if you will, with Marvel and DC, which a lot of those guys are fucking brainless. But they don't just accept someone slapping a name on it and calling it, oh, this is Tolkien's adaptation. But listening to this quote right here, listen to this. This comes from Peter Jackson. This is what he said. And Peter Jackson was kind of, it was his brains holding down the operation for the original, again, Lord of the Rings. And this is what he said. We made a promise to ourselves at the beginning of the process that we weren't going to put any of our own politics, our own messages, or our own themes into these movies. What we were trying to do was analyze what was important to Tolkien and try to honor that. In a way, we were trying to make these films for him, not for ourselves. Okay, so that was his approach back then. And I respect that. And you compare that to, let's say, what the executive producer, Lindsay Weber, told Vanity Fair. And this is what she said. It felt only natural to us that an adaptation of Tolkien's work would reflect what the world actually looks like. That's completely contrary to what Peter Jackson thought. Also, obviously, completely contrary to Tolkien, because at that point, it's no longer Tolkien. It's about whatever worldly bullshit that you want to kind of inject in it. Whereas Peter Jackson is saying that, okay, we all that are a part of this project, we agreed that we're not injecting this shit into, this isn't about us. This is about Tolkien. And we're trying to do the best that we possibly can. We're going to have a lot of successes in some areas. We'll have some failures in others. But we're going to do the best damn thing that we can to keep our thoughts on it out of it and make it about the work per se. I don't think this is exact. Let me say this. I think this person's attitude is representative of everything it is. And this person by Lindsay Weber, who thinks that it should be a reflection of what the world looks like. This is exactly what I'm talking about and what I have been talking about these brands, and they're going franchise to franchise, and all they're using it is again, as a launching pad. It's that it's recognizable. It has an audience. It's baked in. People love this shit. And they want to be able to tell a story based upon whatever brand that they could connect it to. But it's not about the brand at all. It's not about honoring that. It's not about source material at all. It's not about making this make sense in terms of the lore. It's not about canon. It's not about continuity. It's about them first. Everybody that seems to be a part of these projects nowadays has some overarching sort of political, social political slant that they just cannot keep to themselves. And that has to be a reflection because they see themselves, these uber important people. And it's on them to sit up here and try to correct the world and use media in order to do it. And I'm not saying that media isn't a powerful thing. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is when you're adapting something that isn't yours, it's not about you. And nobody gives a shit about what the current world looks like. That's irrelevant. That's not Tolkien at that point. He had his vision. He had his ideas. He wrote them down. It's very detailed. You should be honoring that, not what the fucking world looks like, because that's not what this is about. But when it's about you, your own individual arrogance, this is the outcome. Now, I know Lord of the Rings like the latest, and I think this is going to get the biggest backlash because of the fact that this is a more intelligent audience that we're dealing with in comparison to some of these other franchises. Definitely because a lot of people know of Tolkien because of the books, not like because of a movie based upon it. Not saying that Lord of the Rings didn't get them more fans. Of course it did. But it was like embedded in like kind of Western culture, particularly what was going on in the UK. Now, you have people that are now attached to these projects who cannot keep their political and social views to themselves. And not only that, they have to beat you over the head with it. They'll tell you flat out, and the subtlety doesn't even exist for these people. But either way, it shouldn't matter. If you are an actual creative person, you should be able to look at, if you're going to be a part of some adaptation for something that you didn't create, your number one goal should be to adapt that as accurate as you possibly can to the point to where it honors that. It's not about it being a one by one. It's about honoring what already exists. Not about what story you want to tell. That's not what it's about. If that's the case, use your own shit. Don't use Tolkien. But that's not what they do because they're arrogant. It's going to be interesting to see the outcome of this because I think this is going to be a backlash unlike anything that we've ever seen, because usually it's me and some guys like me that are with the Marvel and DC realm that are talking about these issues. And often they fall upon deaf ears, unfortunately, because the bulk of the normies are just like in la la land. They don't know anything about these comic books. They don't care really anything. So this is why they can get away with doing something like they did with Marvel in the Captain Marvel movie, which is one of the most criminal things that I've ever seen. But with Tolkien's work, I don't think you can get away with that because of this audience isn't going to really accept it. There'll always be definitely those that are part of access media, that will, of course, agree with the agenda that you're trying to perpetuate. Those types of people will, of course, co-sign it. But I think it's going to be a bigger backlash that I don't think they're prepared for. It's going to be interesting. You just listened to a clip from my podcast, For Canon's Sake, which is live throughout the week at 12 p.m. Central on youtube.com/YoungRipper59 and odyssey.com/@YoungRipper59. Be sure to check out my website, ericdjuly.com, so you can stay up to date with everything it is that I'm doing. You can also become a member and get access to a bunch of cool perks and exclusive content, which includes a social media hub where you can interact with myself and other members. It even has an app that you can get, which is now live in the Google and Apple stores.